The high Andean desert of northern Chile is a landscape of volcanoes and weird plants and animals.
You've got these cushion bushes.
But is increasingly becoming devoid of human beings.
They've sold their flocks and moved away.
It makes for quite a contrast with the Atacama desert thousands of feet below, where it hasn't rained for millions of years. Yeah, and we're on the brown, the green or the brown here.
I don't know, you're the caddy, let me know.
Funding for The Desert Speaks was provided by Desert Program Partners, representing concerned viewers making a financial commitment to the education about and preservation of deserts, and by the Stonewall Foundation.
Unlike the southern half of Chile, which gets rainfall adequate for agriculture and development, the northern portion is arid to hyper-arid. It's home to the Atacama Desert on the coast and the lofty Puna, or Andean Plateau, above. The Puna, or Altiplano, is where we find traditional villages and most unusual plants and animals. You won't see them in the dry desert down below. The Atacama Desert begins at about the same latitude south of the equator that the Sonoran Desert ends in the north. The Atacama then extends over 1,000 miles north, well into Peru. The coast is unpleasantly foggy for many months of the year, but not in the fall, which in the southern hemisphere includes April, the ideal time to visit. And the best possible traveling companions on a road trip are a historian like Bill Beezley and an archaeologist like María José Figuerero. Availability of diesel up here in the high Andes is always touch and go, so when you can get it, you get it. Here's the real embudo. This is the only gas there is for miles and miles around. So my guess is it's probably at least 200 miles, maybe more, till the next diesel.
Well, I feel safer now, setting out on a trip with a full tank. Wouldn't like to spend the night in a Puna.
Yeah, well, don't look at the tires, okay? All right.
The Altiplano has always been a very harsh environment in the sense that it's very high altitude, very big temperature fluctuation. There's a lot of cold, frost, and ice. It's a very fragile environment and also very harsh. Very few people actually live here permanently. We have the miners who come and work and leave, whereas the indigenous settlement that has been present in the past and continues on to this day have always been the llama herders.
Villages are hard to find, and villages with people in them even more so. Most of the folks that remain seem to be old.
I'm 72 years old and have been married for over 50 years, living here in Isluga.
Originally, this town had a longer name, Islugmarca, but the Spaniards shortened it to Isluga. And the volcano behind us is named the Volcán de Isluga. So they have tremors here, but nothing happens, and they don't seem to particularly be worried about the volcano. But what they do worry about are insect pests. They only have two crops here. The quinoa, which is a grain, and potatoes. And there is a mosca, a fly, that is attacking the quinoa, and a gusano, a worm, that is attacking the potatoes. Because of that, people are leaving. There's no work here, and moving down to the coast of Chile. ¿Dónde fue la gente?
All the residents left for Iquique and Arica looking for work. Everybody's gone. There's no quinoa or potatoes. The town used to be full of people, but the plague destroyed all the crops, and they all went down to the coast.
For millennia, Andean peoples depended on their crops for survival. Without them, no human life is possible. The importance of harvests is everywhere manifested in their religion. Because crops are so important, someone has given an offering, a stalk of quinoa, the grain, a potato, a bean with beans inside it, and up here, a corn husk. Those are what really matter to local people. If I had to guess, I would predict that this is an offering made to the ancient Inca and local goddess, La Pachamama. Villages may be depopulated, but other locals in the Puna are doing quite well. Looks to me like viscachas only live where it's high and windy and cold.
Well, actually the defining place where to find viscachas are rocks. No rocks, no viscachas.
Oh, that's why they're here, okay.
Yeah, and look at it, sitting and sunning there, half asleep.
Is it a relative of the rabbit?
Well, it has long ears and it has a long tail. Can't see it
Wait,
now.
rabbits don't have tails, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you convinced me.
I mean, it's
Okay,
stretching out.
so it actually is a rodent then.
Yeah, and well, look, there are lots of little other mice running around. So obviously this is a haven for...
This is rodent center.
Yeah. And this, look.
Oh, the scat, yeah.
Yeah, all these little pellets kind of drive the archaeologists and all the other ologists wild, because these are a sample of all the foods they eat. And so they are actually sampling for future generations, for the ologists of the future, all the plants that are in the environment around them.
Piles of rocks mean home to viscachas. Rocks below the ground mean something very different to geologists in the Puna. When one of Earth's tectonic plates slides under another, the zone of friction is called a subduction zone. Steam rising from lake beds and from volcanoes is a sure sign that a few kilometers beneath is some pretty violent geological activity. Scientists have established that right here we are standing over the most active part of the subduction zone. Magma from the Earth's mantle has found a way up to the surface and produced one of the most geologically active points in all the world. Now the outside temperature here is right around freezing, and I thought it might be nice to just have a little dip and get warm. The ranger said don't, because the temperature is 190 degrees. That'll scald you. I guess right by the edge, maybe it's not so hot. Oh, look at the bubbles. I mean, they must be sulfur dioxide. No, that's not too bad, but boy, you get about 18 inches away and it starts getting hot.
So they are thermal waters interspersed over the altiplano. It's the fact with all these chemicals here, they add to maybe new plants, more concentration of plants. Those in turn attract more birds, more animals.
Maybe the animals themselves are picking up some minerals here. I mean, this place is just alive with vicuñas.
Oh, you know what they are? They're the tracks of the flamingos. They're,
really?
Yeah, they're wading off in this direction. And look, you can even see the little red bugs that they probably feed on.
But how do they keep from getting their legs boiled off?
It's either that or get frozen in on the other high altitude lakes.
Well, yeah, I knew they had antifreeze in their legs. I mean, literally they do. But, you know, do they have coolant? This is twice as high as Yellowstone. And Yellowstone probably gets 5 or 6 times as much rainfall. So they're completely different. The only thing they really have in common is this eerie landscape. Hey, look at the bubbles coming up. All right, you're gonna have to take a look and you're gonna have to tell me which one it is, because I know there are 3 species.
From afar, the Chilean flamingo looks all pink.
Hey, wait, they all look all pink.
But look, notice, the other ones should show more black on the tail. The ones that have a big black tail, they're the Andean flamingos.
Okay, we've got Chilean and Andean.
Right. And then the James also have a black tail, but it's kind of like smaller black, a smaller area of black.
I always associated flamingos with tropical things, but this is their place. 80 of these lakes in the region, mostly above 14,000 feet, brackish water. I guess that's what they like. Salares.
Salares, and we're in the middle of one right
Salt
now.
lakes. This plain supports quite a number of vicuñas, and we have to wonder what in the world they live on. The most noticeable plant is this yareta. They don't eat it, and they certainly don't eat the local weed because it's toxic. But the yareta does an interesting thing. It gives rise and protection to tiny little plants. And all around the edge we see miniature bunch grasses. And just on that stuff alone, they can grow to be the size of the small camels that they are and produce the world's finest wool. Vicuña wool once made its way to the coast. For us, it's still a long way down to the ocean. We have plains and high valleys yet to cross. A few hillsides harbor something you don't often see in the Andes: trees. I've always wanted to see the quinoa tree up close. I've read about it and heard about it. But this is the highest elevation tree in the world. It grows up to almost 16,000 feet. These tiny leaves are perfectly adapted for actually freezing, because they get a lot of heavy-duty freezing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important for people here too, right?
Well, yes, it's mostly used as fuel in the past and also in the present, and as building materials. Doesn't have the bark though, which is really, really eye-catching. I mean, it's red, intense red, and it flakes off. And this is papery and delicate. And look at the color is amazing.
Yeah, the pattern's neat.
Muy, muy lindo.
In the Puna, the quinoa trees grow only in a few well-drained locations. Marshy swamps called bofedales are more common and don't like trees growing nearby.
The bofedales are a unique phenomena in an otherwise arid environment. They're surrounded by vegetation that grows with, say, something like 8 inches of rain. And the bofedales are a wetland environment, the equivalent of a peat bog. That is very short, very slow-growing vegetation that accumulates at the bottom of valleys. The bofedales are a prime source for water, so the herders can count on green pastures and water for their herds.
Down the road a ways, I find out about something called a pampa from Mary Jo. Pampa must mean cold.
Well, cold is certainly the word that we could use right now, and windy. But is a Quechua word meaning a flat extent land, la Puna alto andina.
It is high, 14,600 feet.
Yeah, beginning to feel the effects, get a bit out of breath.
You wouldn't want to run here?
No, I'm fine just walking slowly.
But there is a fair amount of vegetation.
Yeah, there is. Mira, you've got these grasses.
Ooh,
yeah,
man,
they're spiny.
right through the gloves.
You've got these low-lying bushes right here. And here, look, you've got these cushion bushes. So these kind of like make up the communities around here. So there's lots of food here for wildlife to feed on. The whole vegetation is in this great big pampa, and we're absolutely surrounded by volcanoes.
4 of them are over 20,000 feet in this area. The first is named Parinacota. The second one, it's the tallest of all, Sahama. This next one is most intriguing and bears watching because there is smoke rising out of a fumarole near the summit. Crossing another ridge, we drop down a bit and find another developing Andean ghost town.
Most of the people have given up and moved away, so there are only very few families that have kept up the traditional llama herding lifestyle.
Do you suppose that people maybe abandoning the town had something to do with the fact that they're living under a volcano?
No, I don't think so. I think it's mostly economical, and there are no schools here. Kids, if they want schooling, they have to go boarding elsewhere. I guess it must be really complicated if you have a large family.
You look and you see that they're using every resource possible.
Yeah, or recycling things and turning them into another. For example, the corral back there, they had one of those oil cans turned into a drinking trough.
They make do, but it's not an easy life. Leaving the Puna and its spectacular scenery behind, we look forward to the warmth and more breathable air 10,000 feet below in the dry Atacama Desert. We tend to take for granted objects that give us a perspective on where we are and how far away things are. In the Atacama, at least in the Pampa of the Atacama, those are completely missing. There is nothing. And then you hit a rough place in the road, and it's almost a welcome relief because it breaks the utter monotony of the landscape. But part of the mystique of the Atacama is the total absence of anything living. So what does the soil look like in a place where it hasn't rained for millions and millions of years? Here we're about 20 miles from the ocean, above Iquique at an altitude of, about 3,000 feet. And what we find is a crust on top of the soil. Underneath, that crust picks up fragments of all kinds of weird rocks that have been left here by the rise of the Andes. They've been folded, thrusted, faulted, ground. But if you look at the whole picture here, there's not a single plant, not a single animal, but it's a geologist's paradise. There may be nothing living here, but when someone discovered a vital mineral, the landscape over hundreds of square miles changed forever.
This is the tailings of the nitrate industry that had world consequences. This was the basis for fertilizer used in Western Europe and the United States and the tobacco and cotton regions, and it was essential to reviving soil that had been destroyed by overuse.
How about gunpowder?
You bet. This was made into a major explosive, and that remained the case through World War I into the 1920s. It took a lot of work, but someone figured out how to take a nitrogen out of the air and then compress it and use it to produce gunpowder.
The remains here of this kind of Martian landscape has not changed because, of course, it never rains. And probably 500 years from now will look pretty much just like this. The nitrates occur naturally in the ground, but the pure product required concentrators, some impressive facilities, and a lot of labor. One of the most famous sites is Humberstone, a crude industrial site that introduced a political jurisdiction previously unknown in Chile.
The production of nitrate extraction was organized around cantons, and each canton had what was called an oficina, company towns, where groups of workers of probably 1,000 with their families lived, and by hand did the process of reducing caliche, the raw material, to nitrates that were sold in the world market.
Wow. So that heated a lot of the caliche or nitrate that they took out of the ground.
This was essentially a hand process. Everything had to be shoveled from the train cars into big tanks where water was added, and initially they just relied on heat underneath to boil the water, reduce the water off, and then what they had is nitrate. So they would get about 40% production from the ore that they had. Throughout its whole working life, this was called Las Palmas, but in order to honor Humberstone, it was renamed Humberstone when it became a museum and then later a UNESCO heritage site. So they added this green as a bit of memory of those plants. The mules missed the green as well and would come up and chew on these things, maybe right here, in fact.
Yeah, this looks like it's been gnawed on. They missed the green just as much as the people did.
In the heyday of this operation, there were 3,600 people living here, with wives and children included in a school for them, and relatively well paid. The problem was that periodically the price of nitrate dropped, and whenever it did, workers were simply dismissed. So the grocery store was on around the corner of the company store, and then open on the weekends and fiesta days. Right here was the bodega, where you could turn in your script. As a result of working conditions here and pay through company stores, these sorts of oficinas quickly became centers for the creation of organized labor in Chile, and a sense that working people, men and women, should live in reasonable, well-paid, safe conditions. Management and their families came out here and enjoyed tennis just like they could back home. During World War I, as the nitrate industry began to decline, this town itself hung on for the next several years, but in 1960, all work stopped here.
Farley Engine, Westminster, London. From Hummerstone, we follow the trade route of the nitrates to the port city of Iquique. Thanks to the Humboldt Current and plate tectonics, Iquique is one of the best places in the world for a parapent. The ocean breezes coming off to the land as it heats hit these steep slopes and rise, so they can take off from here and safely stay up for hours, trying to imitate the action of vultures or condors. Another popular recreational sport in a landscape devoid of all plants is the Iquique form of golf. We have to make sure that everybody understands that this is an authentic Atacama Desert golf course. A lot of people would think this is a golfer's nightmare because it's all rough. It's all rough and sand trap. But if you look around, you can see that it's a golf course without grass. Yeah, and we're on the brown, the green or the brown here. I don't know. You're the caddy. Let me know. But this is the future of the Southwest, golf courses in the Southwest U.S. This is what San Diego is going to look like very shortly with the disappearance of the water table there. And Tucson and Phoenix. Absolutely. They better come here. They should come to Iquique and learn how to put in a proper golf course. One of the things that's great here is they have green painted rocks to represent trees and blue painted rocks to represent the water. That's right. Apparently it's full on weekends. Chile seized the nitrate-rich lands from Bolivia and Peru in the War of the Pacific of 1879. The Plaza of Iquique commemorates this victory. This plaza represents the conjunction of the War of the Pacific with the nitrate industry that created the age of white gold here in northern Chile, centered in Iquique from 1880 to 1920. Surrounding the plaza, we have 4 wonderful buildings that represent everything that happened during the era of white gold. These are represented by the clock tower in the center of the plaza, the great opera house that brought Europe's leading stars to Iquique, the Spanish Center, or the Casino Español, that demonstrates the influence of other foreigners besides English, American, and Chileans. And fourth, the workers established themselves here in the Worker Protection Society of Tarapacá. Oddly enough, it was right next to the Opera House. This bustling, rapidly growing port has a fascinating urban experience about it, in contrast with the Puna, 14,000 feet high. I think I prefer the Puna, where our journey began. One can make a strong case that the Puna, or dry altiplano, is the highest desert in the world. The only competitor is the Tibetan Plateau, which gets considerably more rainfall. The Puna covers several tens of thousands of square miles of Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, and even a little of Peru. The vegetation is sparse, but it's an ideal place to study the adaptation of plants and animals to cold and high elevations. And it is an incomparable laboratory for geologists to study the slowly rising plateau and the volcanoes that line it.
Funding for The Desert Speaks was provided by Desert Program Partners, representing concerned viewers making a financial commitment to the education about and preservation of deserts, and by the Stonewall Foundation,